And we welcome you to this special edition of In the Circle. I'm Eric Lopez alongside Victor Anderson. We're live on the YouTube channel, on In the Circle YouTube channel, which has been very busy on this Wednesday night as we record this. You can check out right now all 8 press conferences that took place on Media Day on Wednesday from all 8 participants. That's all on In the Circle SB YouTube channel. You're not going to find it anywhere else. Trust me on that. There. Also, we're going to have some guests coming up on the show. We're going to preview the World Series. This will also be, obviously, so many of you are also going to be listening to this on our podcast, Victor. It's kind of what we do here. Part of our coverage for the next week or so of the Women's College World Series in Oklahoma City. We're going to talk about all 8 teams and their chances in the field. We'll break down some of the matchups and some of the other stories going on in college softball, some kind of coaching carousel stuff. Plus, Victor, I know you want to get into, we have a national champion in D2 and D3.
We do. We got national champions, first-time national champions, Rogers State in Division II, Christopher Newport in Division III. We're going to be working to try and get the interviews with the champions, so to speak, and other people who were there in Salem and in Denver, respectively. So be on the lookout for that and that news on our Twitter account. Of course, follow us on our social media. Make sure you subscribe and download to our podcast because, look, I understand we're down in Oklahoma City and a lot of you are disappointed, but hey, things happen. That's just the nature of the beast. But we will be announcing soon on our Twitter page what our live schedule is going to be. We're not going to be going live every night like we did last year, since obviously I'm not there or Eric's not there or both of us not there. But that doesn't mean that doesn't mean our coverage stops. We're gonna figure that out after we take care of a live business here, and we'll let that be known to you at that particular point in time. But Mr. Lopez, obviously the big story is, can anyone beat Oklahoma? And you see the schedule below. The biggest thing is that Jocelyn Allo, as you predicted, again, back-to-back National Player of the Year. Oklahoma had 4 players named to the All-American list. It feels, honestly, and as I think about it more, and with Patty Gasso, I'm sure you'll talk about this in a few moments. Patty Gasso, during her media availability today, did confirm Jody Ball will be pitching in the Women's College World Series. How much we're going to see her, when we're going to see her, naturally will be dependent on her health, her mindset, her availability. But Eric, you already have the best team in America, and they played like that, sweeping their way through regionals and super regionals. Now you add the National Freshman of the Year, Jordy Ball, to a pitching staff with Nicole May and Hope Troutwine, who have been holding down the fort and then some in their postseason run so far. And I don't want to say it's a fait accompli, so to speak, for Oklahoma, but it really feels that way with Gasso's discussion about Ball today.
Yeah, Jordy, obviously, Patty Gasso talking about Jordy Ball and saying that she's available. And they haven't determined the pitch count or how they'll use her, but that's big. If they have her available, that's big for them. They're the heavy favorites going in. They will play Northwestern, which I think is a scrappy game. Now, the interesting thing about the new schedule is this would have been under the old schedule, the night schedule. I think this would have been the primetime schedule. However, now with the ABC factor, this is the afternoon session. So Oklahoma, Northwestern, UCLA, Texas will be the first game, followed by Oklahoma, Northwestern. The winners of those 2 games will play on ABC on Saturday. There's 2 ABC games on the weekend, one on Saturday, one at Sunday, I believe at 3 Eastern on both of those. So that's big for, as we'll get to some of the TV numbers later on from the super regionals. That's going to help, I think, the TV numbers a little bit. But yeah, Oklahoma's the heavy favorites. There's no question. They are the heavy favorites. Maybe the biggest favorite they've been yet, right, during this run. So the question is, Victor, who is the biggest threats to them? Who can knock them off? And then is it a situation like 2018 when I was there where Oklahoma lost twice to Washington, lost to them in the first game, and then lost to them again in the regional in the semifinal day? Is it going to take something like that? Is it going to take multiple teams to beat them? Could it be, or can a team beat them in the 2 out of 3 in a championship series? And, that's, I think, some of the questions that we have here from this field. I will say this, and I'll use the D2 format. If they reseeded here in Division I, don't believe Northwestern would be Oklahoma's opponent, right? Do you agree with that? Like I don't think Northwest.
I agree.
Like I think Oregon State would be Oklahoma's opponent. They probably would seed over Oregon State 8, probably Arizona 7. I think Oklahoma would be 1.
And then Texas.
Well, that's the question. Who would be the 2 seed? I think it would be probably UCLA would be the 2 if they reseeded.
Yeah, they will go UCLA. Actually, that brings up a question, Eric, that we kind of talked about a little bit during one of our episodes leading up to Oklahoma City, as this idea and this thinking, should they be reseeding, especially in a situation like this where you have 3 unseeded teams, the first time that's happened in a long time in the super regional format, to make it to Oklahoma City in Texas and Oregon State and Arizona? Should there be more discussion now about potentially reseeding once we know the 8 teams who make it to Oklahoma City?
Well, the problem is the counter to that, Victor. We've discussed this in Division Two. That's been controversial in Division Two how they reseed, right? Because you've had major issues with how Division Two
That's
reseeds the tournament once they get there. Especially this year, you had a problem with it. Just for those that don't
numerous
know
issues.
what I'm talking about, explain.
So essentially, what happens is that they play the regionals or the super regionals, and then once they figure out the 8 teams who are going to make it to their World Series in Denver next year. By the way, next year D2 will be taking place in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and yes, I will one in the circle will be there in some capacity next year. Spoiler alert, ladies and gentlemen, we're declaring that and we're decreeing that right now. But back to the point at hand. They take all 8 teams and then they reseed them 1 through 8. I did have a problem with who they seeded number 1 is Texas Tyler. They were the number 1 team for the majority of the season. And they had Cal State Dominguez Hills, who was essentially the 6th seed in the West and then won their way through, make it to Denver. Everything else was kind of fluid. We talked about that on D2 Tuesday numerous times. I don't want to bore anybody more with
No, but
that
the point is, I
situation.
think the reason why we will not see reseeding, it's just too controversial. I think people are just going to leave it as is. And if you get to your brackets, that it's kind of like the NCAA tournament in men's basketball. People like brackets, so they just keep it the way it is. I know
Yeah.
some people in fact, our chat room is hopping. Uh, they're
But
gonna.
are we not surprised? By the way, can we just before we go any further, we certainly want to thank all of you for your support of our podcast, your viewership, your downloads, your questions, your mentions about us, because a lot of people have been, especially with the one of the topics that we have lined up later on in the show about Oklahoma. Um, it's gonna be interesting. I know a lot of people are kind of disappointed about us not being on late night, but hey. Eric likes to talk
Doesn't
about
well
Eric likes
doesn't mean we won't be on from time to time, just not every night. That's all.
no. We're not in Oklahoma City, obviously, but that doesn't mean the coverage is gonna stop. Trust, it's just gonna be in a more limited form. You're still gonna get the content, but it's not gonna be as frequent as it was last year when I was in OKC. But I don't. It's one of those things where okay, if you reseed, then someone's gonna have a gripe with who's gonna be the 8 seed. Someone's gonna have a gripe about okay, we're the 2 seed now instead of being in the 4 seed. Because let's take a look at the bracket as it is right now, and you can kind of understand, Eric, why reseeding may not be a good thing. So okay, so yeah, we got Oklahoma as the 1. That's the question. That's no question. Who would be the 8? Obviously, it would be Oregon State, Arizona. You certainly couldn't put Texas there. And then who's the 2? Is it Oklahoma State? Is it UCLA? It's gonna be a. I don't. That's why I don't think reseeding when you get to Oklahoma City is a valid idea. You let the bracket play out, and then whoever's left is whoever's left. Now, one thing I will say is that I am a fan, and people, please feel free to mention us in the chat about the crossover.
The crossover, yeah. I mean, obviously that's scheduled there. So I don't know. Well, I don't think they're going to change it. I don't think they're going to reseed anytime soon. So I'm not gonna spend too much time on that. Fang Nai has chimed in saying, "I enjoy not receding. Give the upsetting teams more chance to go further, continue their run." Uh, Rob Stelfler writes, "Well, with brackets last year, Washington got OU in the Super Regionals. Very well could have been Champ Series." Uh, so some people like the crossover and things like that.
I mean,
Steve B is chiming in. Chris
yes.
Plank just tweeted he's going to go off on his show because Grace Lyons didn't win a Gold Glove. Oh, trust me. Don't worry. The show is young. Wait till later. You haven't seen anything yet.
I won't.
I'm really pissed off
if you
about.
hey, if you followed us on Twitter, I forewarned all of you
I'm
about
going to
some.
destroy the NFCA and its existence and the Gold Gloves because Chris Plank's right. Grace Lyons got screwed in the Gold Gloves because
It's gonna be a
no
fun.
sport is worse in picking awards and All-Americans or rankings than softball.
Ooh.
Anyway, but we'll get into that later. You had to get me going. You had to bring that up, Stevie B. You had to I was in a good mood, and I had to bring up the awards. Unbelievable. We'll get into that.
Ladies and gentlemen, let the record show Steve B was the one that brought that up and not your humble moderator slash co-host of the show. Fang says they do like the crossover. Look, I have no problem with the crossover. It's just I know with the men's college world series, they have like true 4-team brackets, and whoever survives that bracket gets to the championship series. But at the same time, you want to protect the team like an Oklahoma or UCLA, where if they lose, they don't have to go through each other to get to the champ series. They can go on the other side of the bracket and win their way back to set up the rematch in the championship series. So it really is all in individuals' preferences.
Well, let's discuss this. Oklahoma's got Northwestern. UCLA's got Texas. UCLA Texas is the noon Eastern game. Sounds weird. That's 9 a.m. Pacific time, Victor,
It
for
is.
UCLA. Very early. The humidity will be a factor, as you and I know, having been
Definitely.
there.
Oh, yes, absolutely. It's going to be a
So we'll
factor.
see. I'm very interested. I think that's I'm very interested how both teams handle that, especially UCLA handles that. Uh, you've got Oklahoma Northwestern. I'm not going to count Northwestern out of that game. I think we've learned. I think everybody should have learned their lesson with Northwestern and Danielle
Here,
Williams.
and Eric, here's the other thing.
Yeah,
People forget last year, Oklahoma had to come out of the losers bracket
yeah,
to make it to the championship
yeah,
series after losing
yeah,
to Odyssey Alexander and James Madison. So
yeah.
let's not guarantee an
No, I don't.
Oklahoma steamroll through to the
I
championship series or
yeah,
the national championship in itself.
I agree. Uh, we'll see. I mean, we'll see about the times. It's interesting. Oklahoma playing in the afternoon. Will they pack the place in the afternoon versus if it was a night game? The third game on Thursday is going to be Oregon State, Florida. You know you're going to get Mariah Mazone against that Florida lineup. That'll be interesting.
Yes.
Oregon State not been here before. Florida's been here, done that. You heard Tim Walton was being Tim Walton at
Oh
media
yes.
day.
Mwah.
He was. I mean, he used some language that were well. I may not use. May not. We'll see.
Please don't. Please don't.
I felt like Tim did. But and then obviously the nightcap is Oklahoma State and Arizona, which I'm fascinated by that, Victor. You've been there, Oklahoma State. I expect that to be a pro cowgirl crowd, but
Yes, it will be. But
I expect
there'll be a
the
lot of
Arizona
Arizona
love.
people.
Yeah,
A lot of
yeah.
Arizona people, a lot of Arizona alums. Kenzie Fowler, I'm sure, will be there along with a lot of the Arizona alumnus who will be making their annual pilgrimage to Oklahoma City. What I'm so interested in, Eric, is you have Oregon State, as you mentioned, pro team who hasn't been there before in the lower berg. You have Arizona coming in as an unseeded team and a path they went in under Caitlin Lowe. And we've highlighted the last couple of weeks the path that they got just to make it into the tournament and then winning in Mizzou and then winning in Starkville to make it to the Women's College World Series. And you also have Texas. Texas having to go through Seattle. Talk about Texas should be a host. They had Andrew Haynes on our Selection Sunday live stream to share his thoughts about that. And then going up to Arkansas to battle a very potent Razorback offense. And Haley Dolcini keeping them in check. And that Sampson pitching a tremendous game 3 to put them in Oklahoma City. I'm of those unseeded teams, Eric. Which one do you feel has the best opportunity to make a deep run? I mean, I'm not saying win it all. Saying of the three unseeded teams who are in Oklahoma City, which one has the best to make a deep run in the tournament?
That's a great question. Um, right? I feel like Texas would be the pick, except I could see Texas going 0-2. I could see them going. I mean, that draw with UCLA and then either Northwestern or Oklahoma, either way,
Yeah,
that could be rough. Um, Arizona's, it's tough. If I had to pick, oh, are you pick? I don't know. I don't know who I would pick on those three. I would say
honestly,
maybe Oregon State only because they've got the arms. They got the arms. And when you have arms, you always got a shot. And they got two really good ones,
they
not
do.
just Mazone. So, but man, that's hard because like Arizona's got it, Drew Oklahoma State. I like Oklahoma State a lot, as we'll get into in this show. And Texas has, they've got the talent, but that's a tough draw. What do you think?
For me, I like Oregon. I want to say Oregon State, but then after what you mentioned about Coach Wallen and his comments, I'm actually gonna go with Texas because it feels to me now that they got that monkey off their back, not being able to break through in game three, 2019 losing game three in Tuscaloosa to Alabama, 2021 losing in Stillwater, game three to Oklahoma State. They finally broke through, and now not many people are giving you a chance against it in that side of the bracket. If anything, Eric, of the four teams on the Oklahoma side of the draw, which is Oklahoma, Northwestern, UCLA, Texas, a lot of people feel that Texas has the slimmest chance to advance and maybe the most likely candidate to go 0-2 barbecue. But there is something about Haley Dolcini, the way she pitched in Seattle, putting the Longhorns on their back. Thank you, Stephen, for the pronunciation. And pitching them to the game one win in Fayetteville. Excuse me, I almost said Starkville. They have faith that Haley Dolcini. And here's the other thing, Eric. This is the thing that people have to understand, and I don't think we talk about this enough. With the change in the format, it gives the winners an extra day of rest. So if Dolcini beats UCLA, she can rest on Friday and be
Fair.
ready for that winners bracket game Saturday.
Right. Because the new schedule, and we'll get more into this as the tournament unfolds. You're going to have the two elimination games on Friday.
Yes,
You're going to have the winners bracket games on Saturday, I believe, and so
correct.
forth. So it's a little different. We'll see how it goes. The National Championship Series will begin a week from tonight, 8:30 Eastern on ESPN. Game 2 is on ESPN2 on Thursday night. Game 3 on ESPN Friday night. The reason,
If
by the way, for the
necessary.
if necessary. Good word on that. So, we'll see. I think, it's going to be interesting too. I'm very interested to see how does an Oregon State handle being here for the first time versus a team like Arizona that was just here last year. Does that give Arizona an edge as far as the unseeded teams? But then you've got Florida, who's been here, done that under Tim Walton. And then you've got Oklahoma State, which they said on their press conference today the expectations now is to win it. They've been here, done that. Now it's about to win it. So we'll see what happens. We'll see how that goes in that from that standpoint. But Dark Sprocket comes in with the Sooners will win the whole thing, and even with some walk-off wins, just wait and see. We'll see. Stephen Lipe coming in, pumping up the Oregon State staff. So we'll see. Fang Nai saying, could Oregon State could be the JMU of 2022 and surprise? Good point. They've got the arms. I think they have the arms. And Laura Berg was a great story. So we'll have a bunch of shows coming up here shortly here on In the Circle throughout the World Series on that. But we'll see. I'm very interested to see. The television numbers came out for the Super Regionals. Arkansas, Texas game 3 did over 1 million viewers. I believe it's going to be the second most watched Super Regionals. ever behind Texas and Alabama 2019. Oklahoma versus UCF did a big number, 861,000 viewers on Saturday's game 2. That is the second most watched super regional game of the weekend. I believe it's the sixth most watched super regional game ever. And so that was a lot of fun. Big numbers. So very successful super regional numbers from that one. And once again, Oklahoma shows they're a big draw. But still, that's a pretty good number to play against UCF. UCF represented themselves well as from a TV market standpoint. Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, UCF, the two most watched super regionals of the 8. I don't know if that surprises people or not, but that's kind of where we're at there. So in that regard there, Victor, are you surprised by that Texas, Arkansas, and UCF, Oklahoma are the two most watched super regionals?
I'm not, honestly. If you think about, well, number one, the Oklahoma fan base, as we've seen in our live chats, are gonna be invested in the Sooners if they can't make it out to, as I like to call it, a place that Patty Gasso built. UCF has always done strong in terms of viewership, whether it's men's basketball or whether it's football when they're on a national stage. And then you have two former Southwest Conference rivals and two future SEC rivals in Texas and Arkansas. And I'm not surprised about those numbers, to be perfectly honest with you. But you know what? One thing that we were surprised about, Eric, the fact that the Pac-12 has more teams in the Women's College World Series than the SEC. And we happen to know somebody who knows a thing or two about talking about the Pac-12, don't we?
We do. She's become a regular on this show, which is a good thing.
Yes.
She's the voice. I call her the voice of Stanford softball. She's an alum, played there, does the radio for them, does obviously an analyst, Pac-12 Network. She's got her own podcast. That's a lot of stuff you've added to your resume, Jenna. Jenna Becerra joining us here on In the Circle. How you doing?
It is, and because of all of that, I'm tired, I will say.
I can tell, yes. Yeah. Jenna and I have been texting. We both broadcasted super regionals, and we both consoled each other with barely a voice. So we texted. We kept it on texting because we wanted to save ourselves. But we'll get to that in a little bit. But let me ask you about this. The Pac-12 representing, fascinating. Oregon State, Arizona, UCLA repping the Pac-12 in Oklahoma City. I think if I would have asked you, I would have told you in February, hey, 3 Pac-12 teams are in Oklahoma City. You said, great. Not sure you would have predicted these 3 specifically, though, would you?
Fair enough point. Yeah, I think those who pay attention to the conference know that it was very possible for there to be 3 different teams. But you're right. I think if you look at, for example, based on the preseason coaches poll, like these are not necessarily the ones. I mean, UCLA and Arizona, yes, they were at the top of the poll, but with Oregon State in particular, they were picked to be 7th and they ended up being 6th in the Pac-12, which I think the fact that they've made it to the World Series just goes to show how competitive the Pac-12 is. Because for me, I didn't really realize, I think, until recently, truly in postseason, that people were referring to this as a down year in the Pac-12. That was wild to me, because for me, it's like, if you look at the records in conference, yeah, people get beat up. When you have a strong conference that has really just tightened up the gap between the top and the bottom, yeah, you're going to beat each other up. You're going to get some losses under your belt. But it actually just, I think, made them even more battle tested, which is why they were able to upset on the road. I think without having gone through that during the regular season, maybe it wouldn't have happened. But I'm thrilled for all of them, but especially for Laura Berg with Oregon State, just what she's been building for a decade. And people forget, I mean, they shouldn't, but they do. Most decorated USA softball player of all time, right? Like, this is somebody who not only on that international stage, but won national championship, not on a Pac-12 team or Pac-10 back in the day, which at that time in 1998 was rare. So she just gets it. And I think we're seeing the rest of the team in the program, they really get it too. And they had a sort of new wave of people join the squad and make a new culture.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up Laura Berg. We're big fans of hers here on this show. We've talked about, you and your show and our show is probably the biggest 2 shows that have talked to Oregon State softball. We've talked about Mariah Mazone for many years.
Yep.
And Laura Berg, you mentioned, is the most decorated USA international softball player ever, national champion at Fresno State 98. Speak to the job she's done there, because, first of all, it's not easy to win in Corvallis compared to other Pac-12 team programs and budgets and resources and things like that. but her roster is full of a lot of freshmen and sophomores, and here they are.
15 newcomers. 15. And it's like I knew that there were a lot, but when I really kind of like it hit me was during postseason when you're taking a look at the starting lineups and like looking back on the season as a whole, and you're like 15 people, 12 freshmen, 12. I don't know if I've ever heard of a class that big, even to start out with. Sometimes those classes get smaller as the years go on, right? But just to start out with that many, never heard of that. And then when they played Stanford at the Super Regionals, 7 of the starters in the lineup 1 through 9, underclassmen, 5 freshmen. So it is just, to me, I actually credit her a lot for recognizing maybe the need for change also, because when you're someone who has the amount of success that she has, sometimes you're like, well, I know what I'm doing. And you just kind of keep doing the same thing. But for her, she's been there for 10 years. She kind of said it herself that like, hey, sometimes you need just like a culture revamp. And sometimes like you sort of need new people, new blood to come in to buy into it. And she talked about in the press conference actually at Stanford, how they were able to do that. And not only that, when everybody came onto campus, they got together in September when they first joined, and they sort of spelled out what are our core values, like what are we going to live by every day. And she said she's proud to say they have done that every single day since then. So I think, yeah, a lot of young fresh meat, but her ability to be open-minded in that way, I think is huge. But then you also still have that upperclassman leadership with the Mariah Maison and then Frankie Hamoudi. That helps, obviously. But still, for them to be able to stick with it when people weren't giving them the attention or respect that they deserve is a big deal. And I think it has actually allowed them to play freer, which is hard. It's hard to allow yourself to do that when you feel like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders. But I think they're doing a great job. You could feel their energy when they were here in Palo Alto.
Such a young team, too. I mean, that's the thing. My roster is young as heck. I know they lose Maison moving forward, but they got talented arms behind her. They've got depth. Now, Jenna, you were on with Victor last week, and Victor apologized on the last episode, but I told him to apologize to you now. Go ahead, Victor. You say you have an apology to make to Jenna.
Yeah, we have a thing where we invite people on before Super Regionals and their teams don't do well. So I would like to take full responsibility for what happened over in Palo Alto last weekend. Jenna, on behalf of all of our In the Circle fans, we like to apologize to you and Stanford because we had Ryan Urquhart 2 years ago before Florida played Georgia in Supers. They got swept at home. And look,
Did you have Brian Rice on before Tennessee lost to Florida?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just hang on. When Vic reaches out to you next year, Jenna, just hang on.
Say no.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so I appreciate that, A. But in your defense, I had come on before regionals, and that went very well.
Touche.
So I came back for that reason.
That's a good point. They won the
Yes.
regional when you had her on. Plus, we had Nate Rohr on the show, and they won the Big Ten tournament title. So
Yeah.
this is true.
Maybe,
So,
And we had our good friend Andrew Haynes on from Texas, and they. So I mean,
maybe it's just how about this? Maybe the players just decide this instead of broadcast.
Yeah, maybe it's their hard work every day and not us.
Yeah.
Who knows?
All right, we're speaking with Jenna
softball.
We're speaking with Jenna Becerra. Tell them about your podcast first before we continue.
Yeah, appreciate that. So it's Believe in Softball with the Believe Network. That is BLEAV. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Believe in Softball. And it's also available on all the main podcast platforms and then also video on YouTube as well. So catch us any of those places.
I caught your last episode. You had Kenzie Fowler, which I felt very proud as we've had both of you on here.
And now everybody's interviewing Kenzie Fowler now.
I know she's become popular.
I noticed that recently. Obviously, you guys have had her on a bunch, but even right after we had her on Believe in Softball, I was like, okay, this is trending. But we knew before it was
exactly.
And she's in Oklahoma City too, so clearly that she has no jinx either when she's on shows. No. But it was great because we've had both of you on to talk Pac-12, and I thought you had a great conversation about the Pac-12. And you talked about, the super seniors graduation maybe also helped the Pac-12 balance this out where top to bottom it's much more parity. And Coach Perez said on the UCLA presser that, they talked about getting, stronger RPIs and every team had above 500. Just speak to that because I think you're right. I think the perception maybe was, well, there's not that dominant team at the top like a UCLA the last couple of years. But now, as we've learned, the depth is back in the Pac-12 that maybe hasn't been there in the last few years.
I think that's exactly right. And yes, Utah was exactly 500 on the season. That's overall. So they were sort of at the bottom, if you will, in terms of overall record. Not at the bottom of the Pac-12 standings, though, by the way. They were second to last. But it's a big deal because you think about how many times that means that people either like didn't sweep or didn't get swept or whatever it is. And it's just you're splitting some of those games. Whether some people win the series or not, you're still able to split. Because sometimes, and I think I've said this before on this show, like taking that third game can be really important also, like even if you lose the series overall. But I just think that it speaks to, again, the top of the pack and the bottom of the pack are closer than ever. And I don't know if everyone realizes, for example, with Arizona, in all the preseason polls, they're ranked right away in the top 25. And they were picked to be in, I think, third, maybe. I think it was UCLA, Washington, and then like Arizona, Oregon. They had a lot of super seniors leave. That is something that Kenzie and I talked about. You're right, on the last episode. A lot. So when you think about having to take the reins over from someone like Mike Candrea, where they literally named the field after him, and you're Caitlin Lowe, yes, you've been there a long time, but it's your first time as a head coach ever. So yes, she's been there, she gets it, but it's different. It hits different when you're a head coach, right? And her having to rebuild the program and make it her own all at the same time, it's a lot. And so for them to do that, what they did after going 0-8 to start in the Pac-12, I think speaks to the culture that is there. We talk constantly. I know the three of us all agree about the staff and the amazing job that they just do together with all of what they bring to the program between her, Taryn Mowat, and Lauren Lappin. It's just kind of a dream team, really. And I just think that, yes, you see them tied for last there, like on the standings, for example, but also like they're tied with Cal. And you think about what Cal did. Cal took the series from 3 different teams who made it, to the postseason. So you almost wonder, like, well, what would have happened if Cal and Utah had been in there in that mix, right? Because it's 3 unseeded teams from the Pac alone made it to Super Regionals 5 overall. That's over half the conference, So I just think a lot of people were saying the Pac has spoken, and I think so. I think not a surprise to anyone who is paying attention, but I'm glad even if people were late to it, at least they're here now.
And now, Jenna, you have a Pac-12 that is kind of on the rise in terms of being more balanced. Right when the Pac-12 is going to implement the softball tournament beginning in the 2023 season. So how big of this success does the Pac-12 capitalize on with these teams now in Oklahoma City using that momentum for their first ever Pac-12 softball tournament next year?
I think it's huge. I mean, the coaches are all excited about it for that reason. It's more visibility towards the Pac. It's preparation in terms of that tournament feel before you actually go into the NCAA tournament, which I think is a big deal. You get eyeballs on the conference before the selection show, and all these other conferences have done that for such a long time. Seeing the baseball Pac-12 tournament, which was the inaugural one that just happened also, was great. I think for me, I was really interested in that for multiple reasons. Obviously, Stanford winning is not a bad thing for my personal purposes either. But just to see how they put it together and how exciting it was to watch, it made me that much more excited for next year with the Pac. And I think because that gap is so closed and it's just as balanced as it's been in years, the tournament's going to be even more interesting because of that. Because it's like, yes, there's a difference between playing, 9-10 weeks of good softball versus like playing at the right time at the very end to get maybe that tournament title. And you never know what could happen. But that's the case with postseason. So it's sort of, when we talk about being battle tested, add that to the list of what the Pac-12 will go through before making it, to compete for a national championship.
Let's just hope we avoid 25-22 games
like
one of those.
Yeah, we could do without that. We could
Holy smokes.
So many people were like, is this the football game? Like, is this a spring game? What is going on? Yeah, that was wild.
that was a little weird. We've talked about Oregon State and Arizona you touched on. Let's talk about UCLA, which I feel weird saying this, but I feel like UCLA is under the radar. And it's kind of weird. They've had some injuries. You saw them up close. They got Faremo, who's healthy this year. Remember, she missed the World Series last year.
Yep.
Who knows? That could have denied a chance for them to go, a chance for a legitimate shot to go back to back. They got Acevedo. Just talk about the Bruins this year, because I feel like they're under the radar. They open with Texas, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Do you think that's a factor? Start playing that early. Your thoughts on the Bruins?
It's a little bit of a factor, especially when you take into account that, and this was talked about in the press conference today, with UCLA, they're on the quarter system. And so they are still taking finals and finishing up school this week when they're trying to compete for a national championship. That's not new. They've always done that. And clearly they've managed it since they have so many national championships. And they're not the only school like that. I think Stanford's like that. I want to say Washington also has quarters. So it's a challenge. I think in terms of time zone, you get used to making that adjustment. Now they did host, right, back-to-back weekends, so maybe a little bit, but they've been there a couple of days now. They've sort of like gotten their feet wet to get used to it and used to the weather. I think that's going to be fine. I think, they sort of talked about it where it's like they can make that adjustment. But yes, for us to say this time of year, not only would we maybe not have known Oregon State would be at the World Series, et cetera, I don't know if we would have predicted that June 1st, 2022, we're saying UCLA is under the radar. But they do kind of feel under the radar. And I think it's just because they're not a surprise to people. Meaning U of A, who people didn't think were going to get into the tournament, potentially getting to the World Series and going undefeated in postseason, that has surprised people. Oregon State, it's the first time since 2006. That has surprised people. But UCLA doing it's kind of like, oh, well, this is what they're supposed to do, right? But like, let's not forget their pitching staff and this like three-headed monster that they have with Faremo, Azevedo, who also has been like peaking at the right time, but all season, like the right time in her career overall. And then you do have Lauren Shaw too. Like, I just think they still have one of the best pitching staffs in the country. And that is what you need the most, in my opinion, pitching and defense at this stage in the season. So they are underrated. It's weird to say that, but not really underrated, under the radar though, like you said.
That's a good word. Yeah, I agree. It's so weird. They're under the radar. Even like in the postseason, we focus so much on Arizona State, the wild regional and the supers, and Tempe not being here. Washington, people kind of up and down. Even Oregon got some buzz, and then they lost. They didn't have Brooke Giannis this year. Yet UCLA's kind of quietly like, oh, here we are. Do you think they're the team that can make the most noise of the Pac-12? Kind of give me your thoughts on the three teams and what you expect from them based on the draw they got.
Well, with how quiet they seem right now, that might make them the most dangerous, to be honest, because then people, I don't know, you have to stay on your toes. And if anyone kind of sits back on their heels around them, that's it. Right. For me, I've been asked this question before and I was like, well, I think UCLA maybe because of the pitching, right. And the consistency that we've seen with the pitching the entire season. But I think if regionals and super regionals told us anything, it is that it is anyone's to take. Truly. I mean, I know with Oklahoma, in some ways, it feels like it's theirs to lose. But then when you look at like crazy things happening in the Big 12 tournament championship with Oklahoma State and the fact that Texas, the two teams, right, that have beat them this year are in the tournament. Did they have Jordy Ball in that Big 12 championship? No, but there are just so many different factors that it is about what happens on that day. That has been shown over and over and over again. So I think UCLA is poised in a very good way, but I think the energy that Arizona and Oregon State have, they could do anything. Like, I can say this now because it's after the fact, but when Oregon State came into town, it was like, okay, wow, they're on another level right now. Like, it felt different, and not just different for them as a program, but just different, that kind of different that you want in terms of turning it up to 11 in the postseason. They had that. And I think Arizona has that too. So it's hard to say.
It's pretty awesome too, seeing Caitlin Lowe there as a head coach after being there as an assistant and a player. And of course, Laura Berg, we've talked about, and of course, Kelly I. Great tradition. Last question, because we know you got to go. You got a podcast to work on yourself.
I do.
Which we'll let you promote. Give me your number one non-Pac-12 storyline you're looking forward to seeing from the World Series, whether it be the new schedule or what's peaks. What are the thing you're most interested in the next week at Oklahoma City?
I think that's interesting. For me, I feel like people sleep on the Big Ten. And obviously, yes, I talk a lot about the Pac-12 just because of the depth of the coverage that I do. But when you think about just historically what that conference has done, and yes, they're only represented by Northwestern, but they played in easily one of the best and most competitive super regionals in history. Easily. Like, not even a question in Tempe with what they were able to do. Talk about pitching. And to me, it's funny because, for a good portion of the season and a lot, we talk about how, pitching's really a lot more by committee these days. That's just the nature of it with how good hitting is. And then all of a sudden, sometimes when you're going for those runs, you're relying on that ace in the circle, like a Danielle Williams. And then it's like when everything's on the line, sometimes we do revert back a little bit to some of those methods. But to me, it's like, if you look at that conference and you look at the legends, like, the wins leader, Coach Hutch, you look at Rhonda Revelle at Nebraska, like I think people sleep on them. And I'm actually seeing a lot of excitement and support for Northwestern, which kind of makes me happy because I think that they don't get enough attention either. It's not just the Pac. Like they don't get as much as they should. So I'm interested to see how they play out.
I agree. That super regional against Arizona State was insane.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Jenna, you had a tough super regional as a calling Stanford. I had one with UCF going against Oklahoma. But nobody had a more brutal, tougher loss in a super regional than Arizona State. And give Northwestern all the credit for the fight on that team with Danielle Williams, who's a throwback, and then Rachel Lewis, who inexplicably was not a top 25 finalist or top 10 finalist.
Eric, save it.
That's a whole other story.
Eric, save it, Eric.
That's a whole other story on that, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to your next episode as well, Jenna. Tell the audience about the podcast because you got coverage as well about the World Series and other things on your show. So tell us about it before we let you go.
Yes, and I have too many things to say, which you guys can relate, right? There's like too many things to talk about. Like Eric's having to, Victor's trying to corral Eric because he has to wait to say
which Victor's usually more often than not.
So I kind of feel the same way. So actually, this week is going to be my first solo podcast episode of the season. We've had a guest every single time. I've done these occasionally, maybe like once every 10 episodes in the past. But for this, it was like there's just too much to talk about. So it'll just be me breaking down all things Women's College World Series. Again, find it on Believe in Softball on YouTube, all the podcast platforms, and at Believe in Softball on Twitter and Instagram.
Always a pleasure to have you on, Jenna. We'll have you on again during the World Series at some point. We'll figure out our schedules. It's pretty hectic, but hey, listen, you've done a great job not only with the podcast, but I watched you this year on the Pac-12 Network. You know I ordered it because I sent your photos, so I'm not making that up. And I thought you've done a great job because you did play-by-play and color on the Pac-12 Network this year. You got the opportunity to do both, and you have now added doing some radio on Stanford, including historically that Stanford win in the regional. So congrats on the hard work. It's paying off. You're super talented and on the rise. So thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Eric, before we go, we have a new hashtag for Jenna.
What do we got?
We have yes. It is yes. That is our goal for 2023. Get Jenna to the Jane. It worked for Kenzie Fowler. Why not let it work for Jenna Becerra? That is our goal. That is our mission. And we're speaking it into existence this Wednesday evening.
Manifestation is real. All the teams have told us that in postseason. So yes, it is real. It worked for Kenzie. I'm hoping it works for me too. And maybe we'll go with that trend. Like forget the super regionals struggle with people coming on or whatever. We'll go with like the positive trend of the things
true.
That work.
Did get Fowler to the Jane. She could confirm that. You know, she hadn't been to the Jane, and then she appeared on the show, and it happened eventually. So we'll wish you the best on that. All right, Jenna, enjoy your. Look forward to the podcast, and we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
That's Jenna Becerra joining us there right before she's about to work on her podcast. Coming out there. So taking the time. We'll have another guest coming up here in a few moments here on In the Circle. On that, we'll get back to Oklahoma City here momentarily. But before we get back to Oklahoma City and some of the storylines, what's the sights and sounds of OKC, Victor?
Yes, sir.
Give me your quick thoughts on Division II and Division III, because the Division II national champion now resides officially in the state of Oklahoma.
And that's the Hillcats of Rogers State knocking off Cal State Dominguez Hills 7-2 in Denver after winning on a walk-off home run in Game 1 on Monday to win their first national championship. 58 wins for the Hillcats. And put that in perspective, the record for most wins in a season previous to the season was 42, all the way back in 2006, that third year, 2008, in that third year of existence. So congratulations to the Hillcats, and congratulations to the captain, to Christopher Newport, winning their first Division III national championship, running their way through the tournament undefeated, knocking off Trine in the D3 championship series. Christopher Newport, we talk about Oklahoma's dominance. Christopher Newport went 47-1. They only lost one game, and that was back in April 27th. They were number one for the last 2 months of the season. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, we will be talking a lot of Rogers State and Christopher Newport on future episodes of the podcast, because we're the only podcast that brings on all the national champions, D1, D2, D3, JUCO, and AIA. We will bring them on the podcast. Believe that, ladies and gentlemen. Follow our Twitter to let you know when that will be happening.
Give me your thoughts on the D2 World Series. I know you follow that closely. What's your big takeaway from it?
Well, first and foremost, a credit and a hat tip to Metro State for hosting it in Denver for the last few years. They did have some rain issues. Thankfully, with the updated schedule, they were able to get everything back in and back on schedule, so they didn't have to worry about pushing things over to an extra day like they had to do last year. Next year, it's going to be held in Chattanooga, Tennessee, hosted by University of Chattanooga. They have one of the tremendous facilities in Division one of the more underrated facilities. And then 2024, Eric, if the both of us aren't there, we're gonna have issues because it'll be held in Orlando at the Boombox Sports Complex. So yeah, it's gonna be
Where is that
interesting.
at? Where's that at?
That's right up about 25, 30 minutes from
I think you should be. Sounds to me like you're going to be broadcasting that way at that point.
Brandon and Elias.
Can we do a hashtag on that?
They have a pretty good broadcaster who does Division
Now
Two.
you had a
Lincoln
bone.
Roses.
I saw you tweet. You had a bone to pick because I believe, by the way, NAIA national champion goes to Oklahoma City. But there was a national title that was taking place on ESPN3 while D2 and D3 was on.
Yeah, the NAIA national championship was taking place.
What's up with that?
I'll rant about that on D2 Tuesday. But hey, speaking of people who we've had on the cast numerous times, our good friend from Extra Innings Softball, national softball editor, and a man who was what's this, Justin? Your 8th trip to the Mecca of college softball this year, sir?
I think this is 7. If my math's
7, okay. Justin McLeod from Extra Innings Softball joining us here on the podcast. Justin, you were there today at the media availability. What are some of the thoughts from the comments and questions that were asked to the 8 participants?
Well, nobody asked about the rain because we didn't have to. It rained a lot. But, I mean, Tim Walton, honestly, is probably as loose as I've ever seen him as a coach. I mean, he was as
he cussed during the presser.
Yeah, happy and easygoing as I've ever seen him. Honestly, the one thing I get from a lot of these teams this week is a lot of them seem teams, players, etc. A lot of them seem really loose. A lot of them seem like they're in a this is what it is kind of deal. I think some of these teams, of course, being the unseeded teams like we've talked about, I think that's part of it. But even, Oklahoma State came in and said, we expect to win this because we've been here. We expected to get here. That was the expectation. Now the expectations change and we expect to win it. But the thing to me is even Oklahoma State with those expectations was all kinds of loose in terms of how they were answering questions and just the way they were just going about things and all that. You get the Oregon States and the Arizonas who, if you look at paper, are not supposed to be here. You get, Texas, who nobody really expected to be here. So some of them are living on, not borrowed time, but time that nobody expected them to be living on. So I think that contributes to it. But that was something that I really got. Everybody seems like that's one thing that makes me think this is going to be a really solid series. I think everybody's in a position of, okay, see what happens, figure it out on the field. And if everybody's that way, then, there's some chances it could be a fun week.
With a new schedule format, has there been any chatter about that? What's your thoughts here with the new schedule format? You have your traditional Thursday 4 games, but then after that, you've got the 2 elimination games on Friday, not Saturday. And then you'll also have a situation where the Oklahoma, Northwestern, Texas, and UCLA, instead of playing, when normally I think in the old format would play at night, is going to play in the afternoon because the winners of that game is going to play on ABC on Saturday. Give me your thoughts on the format schedule. Is there any chatter about that?
Not a lot about the scheduling. Everybody's kind of had time to accept it and all that kind of thing. It is going to be different in the sense of, tomorrow, Thursday, is the only full day. Monday could be if you count, if we go to if necessary games, but Thursday is the only scheduled full day. Everything else is 2 games because they eliminated the 4 games on Saturday. I think everybody's kind of in the same boat of it makes sense, but let's see what happens with it kind of deal. I think there's a lot of, you know, it's not what we're used to. Could be some complications. Could just be kind of interesting, you know. And honestly, I think one of the biggest things is going to be for some of the teams and the people and even the fans. What do you do? You know, normally people have blocked, you know, Thursday through Sunday, for instance, as their days to come to the Women's College World Series, and now you're getting fewer games. You know, usually you'd get Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, if nothing else. If you travel on Sunday, cool. But at that point, you've got 4 teams gone by the time you leave. Well, now you don't have that. The other thing I think is going to be interesting is now you've got teams who will be eliminated on Friday night. Used to, winner's bracket was Friday. Elim games were the first 2 on Saturday. But at least those teams got 2 days, you know, games, and then they got to kind of, you know, just relax and do whatever on Friday and then come back and say, well, now if you lose on Thursday, you got to go play for your life on Friday. So I think that's going to be something that's an interesting thing that I don't think necessarily a ton of people have thought about because, I mean, personally, I'm not in favor of it. I think the longer you give a team who qualified to be here versus getting eliminated right away, I'm in favor of it. But I think that's going to add an extra element that, you know, I'm just kind of curious how that's going to go.
I agree. It's going to be interesting, too, from a television numbers standpoint, how that's going to, the news format, does it help it? Does it? I think the ABC numbers will help. We mentioned this earlier, Justin. Arkansas, Texas, Game 3, which you were at, over 1 million viewers for Game 3. It's the second most watched Super Regional ever. It's only a few thousand behind Texas, Alabama Game 3 from 2019. So clearly Texas, people like watching Texas a little bit.
Yes.
And then Oklahoma, UCF, 861,000 for that Game 2. That's the 6th most watched Super Regional. How surprised are you that UCF, Oklahoma, and Texas and Arkansas turned out to be the 2 most watched Super Regional series of all 8?
I mean, Texas and Arkansas does not surprise me at all. Like you said, I was there, but it's not a being there bias that factors into that. Honestly, that was part.
You didn't bring the numbers up. You're saying your presence didn't add to the ratings.
No,
it brings it up to us when we have it on. No, I don't know.
I mean, I'll take the bump there. I sure will. But honestly, one of the big reasons I ended up at that Super Regional was because I think it was the most competitive Super Regional on paper. And then once you see what happens in Game 1, Game 2. I mean, Game 3 promised to be a classic, and I think it delivered. So that doesn't surprise me as much. Oklahoma UCF actually does a little bit. I mean, Oklahoma's a draw. I mean, that's their chance, clinch it, go to the World Series for sure. So, I mean, I get it. But at the same time, that does surprise me a little bit about the OU UCF game, just because I would not, if you told me guess the second one, I don't know that would have been first 4 guesses, honestly.
Jesse James has chimed in with a question. What do we know about Haley Docini's status? Justin, you saw her up close in person, pitched an incredible Game 2. She was at media availability today. Looked good. Had some great comments. All full go, right, for her?
Yeah, she looks fine. I think the biggest thing last weekend was a lack of rest because, you know, they finished on Sunday night at this regional. Then you have to be, I think they were at home for maybe a day and a half, 2 days.
If that.
Right.
I know. Don't get Vic started on that. Vic was not happy about that.
I'm not like a gentleman over here to my immediate left who was venting his case about the All-American selections, or lack thereof, which we'll talk about later on. But
whatever,
yeah.
It's an organization that has no credibility anyway. So why it's not? They have no credibility in rankings. Why would I expect them to have rankings?
All tweets at Eric Lopez, Elo Eric, ladies and gentlemen. But Justin,
go ahead, as you were.
Well, no, Dolcini, I think Dolcini's fine. I think the fact that she's gotten a rest since the Super, and if you think about it, that quick turnaround between the regional and the Super actually means Dolcini and Texas got an extra day of rest that some of these other teams, for instance, Florida, did not get. So that's a part of it too. So that's a plus. And I think she's fine, honestly. She looks fine. And who I've talked to, it seems like she is fine. Just that, you know, they've got a massage therapist actually that travels with them at this point in the year, apparently, trainer and that kind of stuff. So it looks like she's pretty well taken care of. I mean, seems fine. Plus, I mean, she's a super senior playing for a career here. I think that adrenaline and that extra stuff factors into it a little bit too.
Masseuse, wow, that's pretty good. Victor, we need to add that to our budget. Get like a massage, you know, when we travel a little bit. I mean, I'm just
that'll be more for you than me, sir. I'm
definitely for me.
I'm a low maintenance individual. Just give me some, give me a phone. Just give me some stretching and some She eating some Gatorade. I'm good.
So the other newsworthy item there was Patty Gasso saying Jordy Ball will pitch. Didn't specify when or how many pitches or how many innings. What did you read into her saying that? What do you expect to see from Jordy Ball this during this tournament?
Well, truly, I think Patty's just been slow playing Ball's injury for the postseason. I mean, you knew you weren't going to need her. And I'm not saying that to diss Patty by any means. I mean, it's a smart move, but I think that's what she's been doing because, okay, let's accept the fact that Ball's hurt. Go from there. How bad's injury? We don't know. We only know what we've been told. I think but when you start with the Big 12 tournament, you knew you weren't going to need Jordy Ball. You go to the regionals, you knew you weren't going to need Jordy Ball. You go to super regionals, you figured you probably weren't going to need Jordy Ball. So why throw her? If May and Troutwine are pitching okay, why throw her? I know at one point Ball had what somebody described as a soft cast on her arm. You know, I know when she got the Freshman of the Year award on Tuesday night, she was holding it in her left hand. You know, small things that, you know, sure make a difference. But I think she's probably been playing slow playing it a little bit because she knew she wasn't going to need her till the World Series. Save her, see what happens. And, you know, why not?
And Justin, we talked about that. You brought this up, Justin, when we were doing the live stream together on Selection Sunday, that Oklahoma's still going to be the favorite regardless if Ball pitches or not. It's just a matter of how much of a lock is going to be if Jordy Ball pitches in Oklahoma City or not. Do you still feel that same way, knowing what Gasso said today in her media availability?
Yeah, I mean, Ball's a game changer for him. I mean, Troutwine and May are really solid in the circle, but they're also beatable. Ball is beatable. Don't get me wrong. Ball's not, you know, the second coming of Jesus Christ here, but she's very good. Troutwine and May, I think, can be, how do I want to phrase this, can be beaten easier than Ball can, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So I think to that extent, Ball's a game changer for him. If Ball pitches this week and she's at full capacity, which personally is what I think she will be. I think she'll be fine and she'll pitch whenever they want her to pitch. Then I think it's overwhelming favorite is Oklahoma. And to what you were asking, I mean, if she doesn't pitch, but, you know, here and there kind of stuff, then I mean, I still think Oklahoma's the favorite. I just think the gap between them and, say, Oklahoma State or whoever else is just slim some.
Justin, what did Kenny Gajewski say about Miranda Ellis and her injury? Remember, she hasn't pitched either recently with a bicep injury. Is she available to pitch? We know she can hit, but is she available to pitch and be another arm to go alongside Maxwell and Gay?
Well, so they asked Kenny that question in the press conference, and his response, and I quote, was, "I don't know." I think there again, I think that one's less slow play, just because I think she actually, I mean, the fact that she hasn't pitched and they need her to pitch. Now, they haven't needed her to, you know, be able to win a game, but I mean, it would help. She's hitting. So I think for Ellis, we should probably expect her to hit, and I'd be surprised if she pitches this week. If she pitches this week, it may be kind of what we were talking about with Haley Dolcini on a different level of just the gutting it out and, you know, just because she has to. But even then, I personally would be surprised if we see Ellis pitch.
Of course, Kenny was busy talking about getting asked about his contract extension, which he was kind of perturbed. He says, I don't know where it keeps coming from. People keep bringing my name up every time a job opens. I don't know. I've always got an extension. I love OSU. What did you make of his comments there? Obviously, he got an extension. It was announced right after game 2, after they had just beaten Clemson to advance. That wasn't an accident. People had linked him to Texas A&M, which is still open. What's your thoughts on the whole thing there? Because there was a bunch of questions asked to him about it.
I mean, I don't think he actually minded it as much, maybe. I mean, he did say it was the 4th or 5th extension in 7 years as Oklahoma State head coach. I mean, I don't think he minded it too much, truth be told. But at the same time, I think he I think he knows that where Oklahoma State was when he got there and where they are now is very different. It's two very different places. Like where they were when he got there was not necessarily, they were not, by no means just a gutter team, but they just weren't a contender. They weren't, a team expected to contend kind of stuff. Well, now look where they are. I mean, like they said in the press conference, they're no longer just their expectations to get the World Series. It's to win the World Series. That's the expectation now. And that's not where Oklahoma State was when he got here. I mean, Oklahoma State was only a few years removed from a single Women's College World Series appearance when he got there, but they were still in that position. And now it's a completely different position. I mean, right now, if you asked, 15 softball people, okay, outside of Oklahoma, who's the most likely team to win the Natty? Most of those people are probably going to say Oklahoma State. And that's a very different position for where they were in 15.
Are they the biggest threat to Oklahoma? If you don't pick Oklahoma, are you picking Oklahoma State, or are you picking somebody like UCLA? Do you pick a Florida? I'm going to start with you, Justin. Who would you pick as Oklahoma's biggest threat? Or if I said you can't pick Oklahoma, you got to pick somebody else to win the national title, who would that be?
Probably Oklahoma State. I mean, I think they've probably got the most veteran team, the deepest team. And truth be told, I think that difference in expectation makes a legitimate difference there, because you've got a combination of those transfers, but you've also got the homegrown kids, the Chelsea Alexanders, the Sydney Penningtons, who, want to finish it off that way. So outside of Oklahoma, to me, probably Oklahoma State, if you were going to pin me down that far.
Victor?
I would say I would agree with Justin, but I'm also liking Florida with their energy and the fact that Tim Walton is actually cussing in press conferences. A loose Tim Walton is a dangerous Tim Walton, ladies and gentlemen. And
I think he feels pretty good where he's at. I mean, he's feeling pretty good.
I've seen Florida a couple of times this year. They have the arms. They got the veterans with Skylar Wallace and Hannah Adams. And things are coming together in Gainesville for Tim Walton.
All I got to say is if Florida plays Oklahoma State, sign me up. Let's go. That could be fireworks there for many reasons.
Yes.
Without question here. Quick questions here. The Austin boy saying, Justin, you are trying to be valid with all these takes. Look at you. You got fan man here.
Man, validity is what I chase in life. So
validity. That's pretty good. Let's get into some of the quick off-field storylines real quick. A big thing about the two bases talk.
Uh-huh.
Patty Gasso thinks that the international game is going to do away with it. That's the rumor she's heard. You had people like Laura Berg and Mike White for it. What's your thoughts on this whole two-base topic here?
And first of all, actually, Eric, I have a question. Was it Barry Tremmel who brought up the safety base during the press conferences today?
Barry Tremmel was talking about what goes into your RESA scheduling there. And, I've seen you for 24 years ago. And, I don't cover Russell Westbrook here anymore, so they throw me here.
I was going to leave the Russell Westbrook stuff out of this, but you...
Sorry, Justin. We've Barry Trammel's been a topic on this show before. I booked Barry Trammel, but Justin, you got to be in the room when Barry Trammel's asking questions, and he's asking these random questions from like 25 years ago. Like, hey, what was it like back? Him and Jenny Carlson do like a 1-2 punch on like 1999.
Hey, I like Jenny. We had her on the podcast. We actually talking about the schedule change, precursor to what happened this year. But
that's correct.
So were we talking about the safety bag? Is that where we were?
Yeah, I don't know how we ended up on Barry Trammel there.
You drove us there, Mr. Lopez. Now Justin will try and drive us on the road.
I don't know, but yes, your thoughts. Do you think that we'll see that in the college game?
I do think we'll see it. I kind of go back and forth on it. In truth, I don't see that it's going to make a major difference. Because to me, like you don't see a lot of football tackles between a runner and a first baseman. Does it happen occasionally? Sure, but nothing you do is going to prevent the occasional football tackle. So take that out. The two things you see mainly are the ankle injuries. Maybe foot gets tangled up, and a first baseman going for a ball, maybe runner gets clothesline, first baseman has a wrist injury, whatever. Talk about the ankle injuries first. That's the only place I think there is an actual potential benefit. just because you're not all vying for the same space. You expand the bag and you double the width. Runner can run one way, and the fielder on another bag. But the problem that I see with that one, and I'm not against it by any means, I just don't necessarily see that it's as big a benefit as people think it is. Because, okay, well, when do the ankle injuries occur? How often do you get ankles tangled up together? And when do you have somebody step on the wrong edge of a bag or something like that? That's not going to prevent those. Safety bag is not going to come close to preventing the arm or wrist injuries or the clotheslining or anything like that, because if a ball is taking you into the runner's path with one base, it's going to take you into a runner's path with two bases. So I don't see that there would be a huge advantage there to having the safety bag. And don't get me wrong, I understand that the big thing for it is to prevent potential injuries. And I'm okay with that. I'm not by any means disputing that it could prevent potential injuries. I just don't think that the actual physical advantage is going to be as much as some people may think it is. And on the downside, you look at things like, okay, well, now an umpire has to watch another thing, because instead of being able to focus on one base, you focus on two bases in the glove. Umpire calling it out at first base on a close play now has to watch a little different, a little extra, got to be trained. And I mean, if let's say we add a safety bag, what if an umpire misses a call at first base? Sure, some places you can challenge. What about the places that don't have replay? You'll have to live with it because you voted in the safety bag. Now, is that a reason against it? Does that counter preventing potential injuries? I don't know that it does, but it's something that certainly is worth considering. We need to be careful not to be too reactionary to so-and-so big coach says we need a safety bag because his player got hurt. And I think it needs to at least be looked at. Okay, why would it be a positive? What are the potential negatives? Pros, cons, weigh this, weigh that, before we get into, we have to have a safety bag. And then too, I mean, you get into things, extra stuff like, the runner's lane, and how does the runner's lane change and stuff like that. Little minute pieces that just should be considered before we get to the point of, safety bag needs to happen. Safety bag needs to happen. I think it needs to be a more considered process, at least.
Amen. I agree with that.
Yes.
I agree with that 100%. Before we make our picks, because, well, we owe it to the audience because our preseason picks were not so good. Not so good.
Okay. For full disclosure, we each got 4 of our 8 Women's College World Series picks right.
Okay, I'm glad somebody. Okay, great. Now we're gonna.
That's why I'm here.
We're bringing the dirty laundry.
We
now.
naturally agreed on Alabama and Oklahoma. Justin,
we got one of those, 2 of those, right?
Yeah, Justin, you did have Oklahoma. You did have Oklahoma State, so congratulations to you. I have Florida and Oklahoma State, so congratulations to me. Eric, you did have Texas, so it is what it is.
Yeah, I think we burn all of that. Burn
all of it. Yeah, burn all of it
over. So we'll get into some of the keys real quick, but I want to get into coaching carousel, and then, if we have to, the all-American nonsense. Let's start coaching carousel. Obviously, as we talk, Texas A&M is open. So is Texas Tech. We got North Florida. Vic knows very well. And Jacksonville is open, among others. Your thoughts, Justin, on what to anticipate? What are you expecting to see come this coaching carousel?
At some point, it's going to develop beyond just openings. I'm hoping it's not too much this next week, because it's going to be busy enough around here as it is. Some of it probably will be, if we're going to be honest.
In other words, what Justin is saying, Victor, is not a repeat of 2018 where we have a World Series game underway, and next thing you know, I tell Justin, who I'm sitting next to, I'm the rookie at the World Series, and I'm like,
you're the rookie.
Justin's the veteran, and he's talking all this stuff about coaching moves, and I'm like, hey, dude, they just announced Pete Demore to Virginia Tech, and his eyes opened like the sea. I thought I was going to get killed. So needless to say,
or in 2019 when I was there, prior to semifinal Sunday, we find out that Lou Harris Champer has retired from Georgia.
On the spot.
How did Justin react to that?
Well, he wasn't there, so I didn't get to see that up close and personal reaction like you do when you gave him the Demore news.
How did you react to that, Justin?
It took me by surprise because I didn't expect it to happen on a tarmac. I did not expect a Palm Hag. I didn't expect a reverse Lane Kiffin.
Yes.
So that aspect of it definitely took me by surprise.
Did we just go Lane Kiffin on this show? Don't
He
we
said
have enough
reverse Lane
SEC
Kiffin.
football coaches?
He
Drama
said
and
reverse
testing?
Lane Kiffin.
Oh my Lord! I don't even want to ask what's the reverse of a Jimbo Fisher, Nick Saban spat, but maybe that could develop here at OKC. So it sounds to me
No
like
comment.
something's going to happen, Justin, at some point at Oklahoma
Yeah.
City while you're there, because that seems to be a historical trend.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'd be lying if I said I didn't have a few drafts ready just to be safe.
All right, what do you think happens at A&M? What's going to happen here? What can we expect? Is this a Texas type from 2018 that dragged on for a while? Do you think this is a quick process? Obviously, lots of big names. There was always, speculation. And what's your thoughts here?
I still think they're going to get a name that's worth something, a name that's going to maybe take some people by surprise, a name that would be considered a big name to some level. They're going to get a lot of people who don't take the job paid from their current schools. That much is for sure, similar to Texas a few years ago. We've already referenced one of them earlier today in the press conference.
Yeah.
So that's definitely going to be a thing. I don't know how long it'll drag out. I think there's a possibility it could go for a minute longer. I think ideally, I figure A&M probably wanted to have their coach in place by the World Series and be able to say, hey, this is our new coach and all this kind of stuff, and dominate the airwaves, but I don't think that's going to happen, truth be told. And so, I mean,
so you think it'll happen after the World Series?
That one's tougher to handicap because the World Series runs so long at this point.
That's true. That's true.
I mean, it could be middle end of next week. It could be the following week. I don't think it's going to go multiple weeks into the future. I'll say that.
Okay.
I'll say that.
Texas Tech, we think they'll be done by next week.
If I was handicapping, I'd say probably sometime next week.
You expect marquee names moving?
I think there will be some. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a domino effect.
Okay, that's what we want here. It's what we want. Well, except Vic. Vic's ready for a vacation, but
that's going to happen in August.
It's true. That's very true. On there. Let's see here. We got. I still think Kenny takes it. He just signed the extension to stop the talk of him leaving during the World Series. Are you buying that, Justin? That he just took the extension to quiet? I don't buy that personally.
I plead the 5th
and the 6th,
maybe even the 7th.
All right. Any other thoughts on any of the other coaching moves we haven't made, or something that you're interested in that we need to follow or monitor this offseason, either on the coaching front or even the player portal, transfer portal? Obviously is up and going.
I mean, you've got your big names that are already in the portal.
You broke a big one last week.
Well, I feel like I broke a few big ones last week.
You did.
That's true.
That's why I need to go to xratedsoftball.com
there you go. There's
the
transfer
check.
Plug. Oh, the plug.
Cheap plug.
No, I mean, I think we'll see a couple other big names go in by the end of it. We've seen some mid-major conference, award winners and all that go in. And so I think we'll see a few more of those. I think we'll probably see a couple of big names from some bigger schools, just greener pastures, senior year, master's programs, that kind of stuff, but some big names that'll dominate. But I mean, we've already seen some big names go in. Coaching wise, I mean, it's going to be a busy summer by the end of the summer because there's going to be the domino effect, as I call it. But I'm hoping that doesn't happen until maybe the end of next week. I'd kind of be okay with that, just because, I like sleeping a little bit this time of year.
Good luck with that.
Sleep? What's that?
Let's get into a couple other topics, award topics, because actually some of the audience wants me to ask you about how did Grace Lyons get screwed out of the Golden Glove? Seriously, I've had multiple people ask. So I will defer to you. Yes, you were there. You were at the Golden Glove Award ceremony the first year. Don't worry, I'll rip the All-Americans in a minute. But I figured let's start with Grace Lyons because, the Oklahoma fans want to know. And I'm not going to, and apparently Chris Plank is going to go off on his show tomorrow instead of challenging Vic to a trivia question. Trivia challenge. That's why he's not on. I don't know. But your thoughts? Should Grace Lyons have won the Golden Glove? Who won the Golden Glove for the shortstop position?
That was Jenna Laird from Missouri.
Oh, there you go.
Now, the first thing I'll say is you have to correct me if I'm wrong, and one of you guys can run the stats for me here. I want to say Laird had fewer errors than Lyons. first and foremost. So that's going to be
I'll
one
confirm that
place.
information shortly.
See, there you go.
Makes the statistician of the show. I mean.
There you go. Now, don't get me wrong. Errors is not the first thing that should be considered, but it is part of the consideration. So if I'm not mistaken, I want to say, and Victor, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, I think it was 5 and 6. Laird had 5, Lions had 6. So it's close. But Lions did have more errors. Then too, the thing about Lions is the defense that she's best known for is, I'm going to call it the flashiness. I'm not saying she's a show off in terms of flashiness. I'm saying flashiness in terms of the Derek Jeter style plays. And those are great. And they actually are very important to Oklahoma because, anything goes to Grace Lyons is probably going to be an out. Tough play or not. But in the same time, I don't think flashiness necessarily plays into the Gold Glove as much as it seems like it should when you're watching on TV. The fact that they only had one set of Gold Gloves like the Major League Baseball does, I mean, there was going to be somebody good left out. And Lions is good. I just think at the end of the day, they probably just decided one over the other. And truth be told, I'm sorry, OU faithful. I mean, I don't know who's, I don't know who's better, but I don't have a big problem with Jenna Laird winning. I don't.
That's Justin McLeod, everybody.
This is me going for validity again, obviously.
That's Justin down on the screen. Go at him. Austin boys going at him. I'll say this. It's a subjective thing. I don't think you should base the award on just errors alone because especially in a position like shortstop, how many balls can you get to? Sometimes a player may have more errors because they can get to more balls and more range. Whereas certain players don't have the range, so they don't get theirs, but it's a hit. I think you have to value that too. I'm not saying they didn't in this awards. I don't know. This is the first year of it. I've seen both Laird and Lyons. I think they're both really good. So I'll defend you on that. But I do think, I don't know what the criteria was, but I don't think you can just go based on numbers. Wait till we get to All-Americans on that. Anyway, but I'm saying we're just gotta tease them a little bit. But that's the only thing I would say. But I do we like the concept of the Golden Gloves now making it being a team? Because it used to be they awarded to one player, and now it's about they're making a whole team, kind of like Major League Baseball, taking a page out of MLB.
So they always, when they started doing Gold Gloves with the Pro League at the time, was when they did one player. And I think that was fair because the Pro League was the Pro League. I think for being college softball, I think a team pitcher catcher 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3 shortstop and 3 outfielders, I actually think is the way to do it personally. Do it like Major League Baseball does it. And then, just pick, because then too, you don't have to worry about the subjectivity of, okay, here's a catcher, here's a left fielder. Which one's a better fielder? Because it's a completely different consideration for a left fielder and a catcher. A catcher's got how many more chances to touch the ball? Left fielder may get 2 in a game kind of deal. But if the left fielder gets 2 in a game, the catcher still had how many? So
yeah, exactly.
I think the team-wide thing is the way to go to be completely fair, because then you're only factored against players at your own position.
Yes. Oh, by the way, the statistics for Laird v. Lyons. Laird, 163 chances, 4 errors, 975 fielding percentage. Grace Lyons, 138 chances, 6 errors, 957 fielding percentage. But honestly, and hey, Austin, don't get mad at us. Eric and I were not the ones
Austin
that made
is angry. Why? Hey, man. By the way, our podcast is doing very well. It's the #1 podcast softball. Trust me on that. We know that for a fact.
Hey, Austin, it's not Austin. Eric and I were not the ones that made the take. He was the one that made the take. He was the one.
Mr. Anderson, do you still have the statistics you just read in front of you?
Yes, I do.
Can you just read them again? Can you just read them again real quick?
Okay, Grace Lyons, 138 chances, 6 errors, 957 fielding percent.
Oh, did we just mute Vic? Did Vic just get muted? Oh, there we go. Vic's back.
Okay, I'm about to say.
Read Laird's stats.
I think Austin tried to mute you, Vic. I think he was trying to mute you. I don't know.
Hey, I'm just doing what my guest was asked.
Give me layered stats here.
163 chances, 4 errors, 975 fielding percentage.
Okay, so for the record, I'm not trashing Grace Lyons. Grace Lyons is a tremendous shortstop. But what I heard there were fewer chances, more errors, and a lower fielding percentage. Based on those numbers, you cannot choose Lyons over Laird for the Gold Glove. More errors and fewer chances. Like, I mean, at that point, you can't. And like I say, I think Grace Lyons is a tremendous shortstop. If I'm picking a team, I'm probably picking Grace Lyons over Jenna Laird. But statistics have to play a role, and those statistically, Laird was better than Lyons. I don't make the stats.
All right, you want stats? I will give you stats.
Oh boy, folks.
We move on. The All-Americans were announced in the NFCA.
You notice, ladies and gentlemen, that I am not the angry one on the show today for once, which is kind of refreshing.
Well, this ain't the first time we've been critical of the NFCA, have we, Victor? How have they done as far as their polls are concerned this year? Not well, have they?
We haven't mentioned them much, if at all, on the podcast.
For good reason. I mean, really, I didn't want to do it, mention them again here, but there's a news item here.
Eric Lopez, Elo, ladies and gentlemen.
All right. So you want to hear a stat? Here's a stat. 9 of the top 10 leaders in the country in RBIs were selected as an All-American today, except one. One of the 10 was not picked. That particular person was number 2 in the country in runs batted in. Would you like to guess who that is? Anybody? Anybody?
Wait.
Nick's
Hold
got
on.
his hand up.
Who is Jada Cody?
That would be correct. Jada Cody, 75 RBI, second in the country behind Addison Barnard of Wichita State, who had 84. Cody had more RBIs than Jocelyn Allo and Tiari Jennings. Allo and Jennings, 72 each. Bailey Klingler, 71. Danielle Gibson had 70. Carly Spade of Miami, Ohio, shout out to her, 70 RBIs driven. She was selected an All-American. What schedule did they play? Aaron Koffel of Kentucky, 68. Lenny Malkin of Arkansas, 68. And then Cindy Sanders of Arizona State, 63. Grace Lyons, by the way, 62, tied for 11th in RBIs for you Grace Lyons fans as well. What? Huh? How does that happen? How does that happen? The best player on a super regional team that got to the super regional, 16th best team in the country, second in runs batted in, among the best in OPS, doesn't get selected to one. And trust me, there's like 100 spots in this All-American list. Anybody, you can fit people wherever you want, and you don't pick them, you're a bunch of clowns. That's what I say. And I'm going to tell you something. I don't want coaches should be not allowed to vote for any of these awards. There is a clear conflict of interest. Either they're voting for their own players, or they're politicking for their own players, or they're not voting for certain players because maybe they didn't like them, maybe they didn't get them in the transfer portal, maybe they didn't go to their school, or maybe they're trying to make sure that player doesn't get selected so they can tamper with them and try to get them to go to the transfer portal. It's a joke. How about the NFCA board take their damn sports seriously? Thoughts?
How do you really feel?
Yeah, tell us how you really feel, sir.
I agree, by the way, with Stephen Lake that Cody got screwed out of being first team all-region. It was a joke that she was a second team all-region. How the hell did Marshall, with respect to Marshall, nice team and all, 4 all-region selections to UCF's 2? I'm sorry. Who's the team that actually made the tournament? Anyway. Again, you know who votes on the regions? Coaches who should not vote on this. Clearly, they don't pay attention. Clearly, they don't care. They probably, you know what they are? They're going to go to their little computer and they're going to look at their little dorky numbers. Oh, look at this kid. Look what he did in February against an SEC team. Oh, look what he did in these numbers. Instead of actually watching the games played. Because if they would watch Cody play, they would know she's a great defensive player and catcher. She could play third. She could play in the outfield, and teams pitched around her. But no, let's go with dorky numbers because that's what these coaches hide under. Well, she only hit so-and-so against certain teams. Shut up, dorks. I feel good.
I got nothing. I got nothing.
Does anybody in the audience think that Arkansas is as talented as Oklahoma? Because Arkansas had 4 first-team All-Americans, 5 if you include Shanice Dells, who was numbered in the second team. That equals Oklahoma. I wouldn't pick Arkansas to beat Oklahoma. What?
I mean, with your overall point, no. With specific points there, I mean, I'd have to raise my hand on that one. I don't
They
think
got talented players. I don't think they're all first-teamers.
I don't think they're as talented as Oklahoma, but I had zero issue with them having the same number of All-Americans. I thought all the All-Americans were there appropriately. And those of the 5 and 5.
Of the 5, yes.
For the record.
All right, let's go. Let's quickly go through this before I throw up.
Throw up or throw something.
Yes.
First team, Georgina Corrick, Jordy Ball, Kelly Maxwell. Any issues there as far as any of those? You also have I just want to they're both all in the pitcher category only. Any issues there?
No.
Okay. I agree. I think if we had a pitcher of the year, by the way, can we have a pitcher of the year award? I mean, good Lord.
There is
How
one.
long are we? There is? Where is that?
But wait. But yet,
when does that come out? Why isn't that out already? They announced the freshman of the year. Announced the pitcher of the year. I care more about pitcher of the year than freshman of the year.
My All-Americans aren't out yet either, so I can't say
you're
much.
busy. You're busy. You're busy. Obviously, you're busy. You're waiting for, things to happen at You're partying it up at OKC. I mean, without Vic this year, which I don't know if that's good or bad. Do you miss Vic? Do you miss Vic this year? I mean,
I mean, yeah, it's awfully quiet. I will say that. Awfully quiet.
Wow. I'm just going to move on. You guys really hit it off since the live selection show. Mia Davidson, first team catcher.
Yeah.
Danielle Gibson, first base. Tiari Jennings, second base. Hannah Gamble, third base. Bailey Klingler at shortstop. Rachel Lewis, first team, good. I actually will give him props for that since they couldn't vote him for, like USA Softball couldn't pick her for top 25 play of the year, but, whatever. Jada Coleman, KB Sides is on the first team. Valerie Cagle, utility pitcher. Jocelyn Allo, Keely Richard, Grace Lyons, she's been a popular name. Danielle Williams, and Lenny Malkin, first teamers. Any thoughts? Cindy Sanders, Arizona State also.
No, I mean, they all should be All-Americans.
No beef, honestly.
I would drop a few of them not to first team, but
name them.
I don't think Lenny Malkin should be a first teamer at all.
I
just don't.
That might be we might agree on that one. I mean, I think she deserved to be an All-American. And
sure.
Part of my thing too is I have less trouble with first, second, and third team designations than I do with All-American versus not All-American.
Exactly.
Because to me, if you're a third team All-American at large,
you're an All-American.
So I have less of a struggle with first team, second team, third team than I do, hey, you're on there, hey, you're not. So, I mean, Malkin first team and could go either way, I guess. But
now part of this is too, like, she's positioned as an at-large DP or a UT non-P. There's a lot of, I think we got to clean some of this up to kind of clear up some of this stuff because I think that's the other coaches can manipulate this and put a player in a certain spot where, hey, that's a better chance they make it there than they do in another position.
You need to, here's the problem. We need to have clear criteria for what defines somebody to be a utility player.
Right.
There needs to be a clear definition on who is the designated player. We need to have clear definitions. That's why we have all these loopholes and these workarounds with these players. Because there's nowhere clear definition of what you need to qualify to be a utility player, what you need to qualify to be a DP, what you need to qualify for to be an at-large.
No, that's a good point. It's a great point.
But hey, what do I know? I'm just a guy talking common sense on the show, and I won't say the other line because I said that on opening day, and Eric gave me a call telling me to take the tweet down, so I won't do that again on tonight.
Well, that was a whole different. That's a whole different topic. Whatever.
I was thinking there is some kind of criteria to define that.
Well, apparently some people don't follow it.
Now, off the top of my head, I don't know what it is, but and I could be wrong. Don't get me wrong, but I was pretty sure there was some kind of criteria that has to be met, at least for one of those, either the DP or the UT.
Like an
spots.
innings limit, like you have to hit a certain amount of innings or something like that.
And I want to say, because I know each coach submits up to 8 of their players, but I'm pretty sure it's the same criteria for at least the DP, maybe, as it is for any other defensive position. Like, that's got to be their primary position, so to speak. I do, if memory serves, I do think the utility position has more room to give. Like, for instance, Jada Cody would probably be a utility player.
Yes.
Because, she starts at different places, she plays different places. And all that. So I think that one's got more room to give, just because a true utility is going to meet different definitions based on different players, different teams.
Second team, Sydney McKinney made second team All-American at large. Shortstop, Ali Skaggs at large second base. Sarah Mosley at large third base. Montana Fouts. Do we really think she was an All-American this year?
I think she's Montana Fouts.
Right, she got in because of her name. I mean, like, I would argue that Mariah Maison had a better year than Montana Fouts.
She did.
Well, Maison's third team, Fouts is second team. Peyton St. George, Victor, your girl at Duke.
I think Peyton St. George should be a second team, and Montana Fouts maybe third team.
I mean, because if we're going stats in there, so
right, because if we're going by pure statistics, and by the way, Duke went further in the season than Alabama did. So,
Shanice Dells, Megan Faramo, Catherine Sandercock were your second team pitchers. Delaney Wiz, catcher. Haley Lee, first base, A&M. Janae Jefferson, I know a lot of Texas fans were upset that she was second team. I don't know about that's tough. Where do her? I mean, obviously, Chari Jennings was second base, first team. Sydney Sherrill, third base. Aaron Koffel, shortstop. Acuna of Arizona State. Addison Barnard, second team All-American. Bailey Vanoy, outfield for Charlotte, makes a second team All-American. Miranda Ellis makes it as a utility / pitcher. And then Skylar Wallace, who Tim Walton says might be one of the best players he's ever coached, second team on a DP or utility non-pitcher. Gabby Plain makes as an at-large pitcher. Those are your second teamers. And then the third team, Mariah Maison, as I mentioned. Haley Docini, third team All-American. Peyton St. George. McKenna Smith at Cal Berkeley is your catcher. Karina Gaskins at first base. Cam Ibarra at second base from Nebraska. Carly Spade as Miami of Ohio, third base. Third team All-American. You saw her up in person, Justin.
Yeah, pretty solid player.
Did she win Conference Player of the Year?
Did not.
But she's an All-American.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
But for the record, coaches vote on both awards separately. Like, different groups of coaches vote on Player of the Year and vote on All-American.
Who won the Player of the Year in the
Faith Hensley from Ball State in the MAC.
So that's a little weird. Jamison Cavell of Duke, shortstop. Cameron Greenwood, Louisville, makes it as an outfielder. Emma Ritter. Elisa Bonstrom of Utah. Sierra Lang of GW makes it as a utility pitcher. Mac Barbara of San Diego State makes it as a DP utility non-pitcher. I would actually have Cody over Barbara. That's the answer right there. Come on. Give me a break. Brianna Perez of UCLA. Bailey Parshall. I will say that's a good pick. Penn State. I thought she was really good. Rachel Becker, I know you like a lot, Justin, at Purdue. She makes it as an at-large shortstop. Maya Stevenson of Marshall, and then Lacey Fincher of Georgia rounds out your All-Americans.
I mean, the thing is, truth be like I say, I have less trouble with the first, second, and third distinctions. I mean, are there some who are first who should be second? Yes. Second that should be third that should be first? Sure. But I have less trouble with those distinctions because, to me, All-American's an All-American. Honestly, there's only a couple, honestly, that I would genuinely say I really wonder if they are. So, I mean, in general, I don't mind the list, honestly. I really don't.
Well, I think you already know how I feel about it. Let the former All-Americans vote. They know. They watch. They know game. Anyway.
You would think.
When is your awards coming out?
Monday or Tuesday.
All right.
All Americans and awards are one day and then the next. I don't even know what day it is today, though. So
It's Wednesday.
Katrina
okay.
Wednesday. Katrina Jensen. That's why they have this thing called a calendar.
Learn something new on the podcast. Okay.
Katrina Jensen with a question. FSU and Bama eliminated. Anybody see that coming?
Well,
Both of them out in the regionals.
No.
I mean, now don't get me wrong. Through the course of the year, if you had told me Alabama was not going to make the Women's College World Series, I would have been completely on board. Did I see them leaving in the regional? No, negatory.
Question: who will be the next coach at A&M? I don't know. Do you want to throw names out there, or I mean, people? No.
No.
I'm not going to. I'm sorry, but
not gonna be able to do it.
We talked about it earlier. We gave you a time frame. All right, that's what
right. See,
Austin say Montana Fouts was not an All-American. I think some would say I agree with that. I agree. She got in on name. I don't think this was her best year. Not a great year. You know, people talk about only one team from the SEC. There was the stat that the ERAs, the numbers were up this year in the SEC. Maybe we should have paid more attention to that. Maybe the pitching quality wasn't as good in the SEC as it's been. Maybe that's why they only have one team here. Just, you know.
Well, I think pitching across the board, if you look at Gabby Plain, if you look at Alex DeRocco, Catherine Sandercock, Montana Fouts, just keep going down the list, all the pitchers we're used to seeing dominate hitters didn't. I mean, they still had dominant moments, but they also had more weak moments than we're used to seeing. And I think that's part of it. I think the hitting just honestly got better.
Kristen Johnson chimes in. Coaches should not vote for awards and polls in all sports. Wow, all sport. We're expanding it. Kind of like, there you go.
I'll say this. The one thing about softball is, and the reason at this point in time, I disagree with that statement is there's nobody else to do it. There's nobody else to vote. And now I disagree with the weekly poll during the season. Like I don't think coaches should be voting on that because they don't have time to pay attention and do their paying jobs.
And by the way, it's not usually the coaches; it's the SIDs that behest the coaches.
That's the problem, Justin. That's the problem. Are they paying attention though? I mean,
but to me though, a poll that happens weekly during the season when they're trying to win games themselves versus All-Americans where you spend hours poring over statistics and impacts and that kind of stuff. To me, those are two separate things because when you're going week by week, you've got to pay attention to, okay, what did Oklahoma do this week? What did number 2, number 3, number 4, all the way to 25 and really all the way to 30, 35 to be able to properly form a top 25 and send it in by a certain deadline. And that's not reasonable to me, even for SIDs, because most of the time they're in the same place as the coaches are, it's just they're not physically coaching. But the All-Americans to me are different because you're in a room. It's like the selection committee to me, where, you know, the selection committee has other jobs, but they are able to get together in a room over a couple of days, look at body of work, you know, all season and really wrap it up. To me, All-Americans fits that same principle. So I actually don't mind a vote on that.
But the issue is on both fronts, you're going to have conflict of interest, just like coaches probably vote in the polls for certain coaches or teams they like because maybe they're on their schedule, so that makes them look good, or they won't vote for certain teams or certain coaches because maybe they don't like that coach or they don't like that team. There's just too much conflict of interest. I'm not saying that there aren't people there to try to do a good job, but based on the results, quite frankly, it's been piss poor. Based on the ranking system. And if we're going to be critical of committees about seedings and things like that, then we better be critical of coaches when they do a lousy job in the polls or in selecting All-Americans, because I think that's only fair that we call them out on and not say, well, they tried their best.
To be fair, I would like to go on the record that I don't think they did a lousy job with the All-Americans. I think they missed a couple, but I actually like the list as a whole. So I just want that stated.
Good luck telling that to the gentleman over to my left, Justin. Good luck.
I just need it noted for the transcript in the future.
Fair.
Who is more Oklahoma football at the voice of college football? All right, cool. Who is more equipped for a longer Women's College World Series run? Northwestern, Texas, Arizona, or Oregon State? Good question. It's a really good question there. I kind of like that one.
Is that one for me?
It's for all of us.
It's
Oh,
for
okay.
it's for the community at large.
Okay, who's going first?
I'll go first.
Go for it,
Okay.
Vic.
I will say of the four, I will go with Texas simply because they are playing. I feel they have the fresher ace with Dulcini, and they won't have to worry about as tough of a first game as the other three with Northwestern, Arizona, and Oregon State. But there's a distinct possibility that all four of those teams could be going home by Sunday or Monday. A very distinct possibility that two of those teams could be done by Friday night. So, but for me,
It's
I
hard.
like Texas.
It's hard because Northwestern's a seeded team, but they play Oklahoma. So if you like Northwestern to make a deep run, either you like them to upset Oklahoma, or you think they'll come out of the losers draw and make a run.
Exactly.
Texas has a tough draw. I mean, they all have tough draws. Some people earlier brought up, could Oregon State be this year's JMU, where they just keep surprising people?
It's possible.
Underestimating them.
It's possible. They got the two-way star Mariah Mazzone, who
and they got more. And they got. It's not just her as far as arm quality.
they got depth. They got depth, and they're playing. They are essentially playing with house money right now. They in Arizona are playing with house money and have nothing to lose. Everything from here on out is more cherries on the Sunday.
That's like a bunch of analogies all in once, Vic. That was.
I would have said more Dr. Pepper in the fridge, but you know.
I was going to say, do you have a Dr. Pepper, Justin?
It's actually it's just right over there.
I figure. All right, do you have an answer to that question? Who do you like?
It's tough for me, but I think it's got to be Texas. The fact that they've already beaten Oklahoma once, they've got Dulcini, who I think of all the pitchers who's gutting it out at this point, meaning Williams, Dulcini, and Hannah Bowen. I think Dulcini is probably the one I have the most faith in to last all the way to the end, so to speak. And then offensively, I mean, the scrappiness they had last week. I don't like their offense the best, but I like their just overall. I like them the best. If we were talking strictly offense, I'd say the Northwestern Arizona State, Arizona, personally. But overall, I think Texas. I mean, Texas hasn't been here before, but Jefferson's been waiting to get here for how many years now?
Yes,
Dulcini's obviously very motivated. I just for me, I think Texas is the one best suited for it. And I mean, for the record, somebody said from the beginning of the year, Texas had a World Series roster. I think that this is their chance to prove that not only do they have a World Series roster, they've got a roster that can make a difference in the World Series. Because I don't think that's proven yet by any means.
Yeah. We've been getting a lot of questions about this, gentlemen, so we might as well just address it. There's a lot of conversation about that illegal pitch in that Game 7 in Seattle against Gabby Plain that helped lead to Texas advancing to Supers. Rob asked, do you think Texas makes the Women's College World Series? Well, first of all, Rob, you have to presume that Texas still beats Arkansas in that particular scenario, or even advances to Supers if they don't call that illegal pitch. So it's difficult. It's difficult to say, honestly.
I don't think it made that much of a difference personally. I mean, you have to remember in the same game there was that call of the missed hit by pitch call for Texas that got pulled back. So if you're going to say how big of a difference did the illegal pitch call make? And for the record, she was illegal. It was an illegal pitch. Like, it's not like it was a created call. It may have been a badly timed call, and the only time they called it, which I agree with the consistency thing, but it was illegal. So you can't say it's a bad call.
Yeah, I agree. I thought Madison Shipman made a fantastic point in the Blacksburg Super Regional because I don't know, you're surprised. Virginia Tech was getting called for illegal pitches. What a surprise. With Emma Lemley, which continued to be a story. She brought up an interesting point, which is, yes, she was getting called for illegal pitch, but the thing that she found odd is, why are you calling it when there's when she makes an out, when there's two strikes, when it's the same way she's been throwing 3 pitches earlier? It seems like they're selecting when to call it. It's like either she's illegal all the time or she's not. it's weird the timing of it, and I think that's what some people are upset about with the Gabby playing thing is the situation, right, Victor? We're both we cover basketball. The basketball, you could call a foul at any time in the game, but more people are bothered by it if you call it or don't call it in the fourth quarter versus the first quarter, I guess.
You're always taught as
right?
an official. You're always taught as an official. If it's a foul, call it a foul. Whether it's the first 5 seconds of the game, last 5 seconds of the game. If it's a foul, you blow the whistle. If it's a penalty, you throw the flag. If it's an illegal pitch, call an illegal pitch. But the one thing that is always seems to be consistent in all those scenarios is the inconsistency in which they are or are not called. And that's what softball fans get so frustrated about. It's the inconsistency of when illegal pitches are and are not called.
Oh, I mean, that's a fair point, and it is inconsistent.
Yeah.
But I also would have a much bigger problem with an illegal pitch being called and ended up potentially changing a game. Because again, I'm not going to say the game was decided on an illegal pitch. So I'm going to say potentially, but I'd have a bigger problem with it if she wasn't illegal, but she was
in that situation. Right.
Poorly timed or not.
But it was. I encourage. We had Jenna Becerra on earlier. I encourage you people to tune into the episode. She had Kinsey Fowler. They talked at length about illegal pitches. The Gabby playing pitch was brought up. And Kenzie talked about her experience, how she was called for like 17 illegal pitches at the World Series for hopping, which she'd never been called before, and threw her off. And she felt like if, she had a different umpire in game one, maybe it would have been called different. It'd be a completely different experience. And I think that's kind of the issue is certain umpires look for it and certain don't, Victor. And that's the problem, right? It's like certain NBA officials look for a certain, they'll call it tight. Some will let them play.
And then there's Scott Foster, who makes up his own rules as he goes along. I'm sorry to bring that up, but
we're just taking shots at everybody, because that's what we do here. No, I'm not. We're not going to address the Jada Cody thing because that's just going to piss me off more. We already addressed that.
Bryson, I'm already due with a pissed off Eric Lopez. I don't want to do it anymore. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, strike zones is another example where it's not consistent. They don't. I mean, there's some that don't, and that's frustrating. To me, that's even more frustrating because the strike zone should be at the letter of the rule, and people see if we've accepted that every umpire has his own strike zone. Like, who the hell is that umpire to have his own strike zone in baseball or softball? Screw
Angel
you.
Hernandez.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, Angel, God, he's the worst. All right, let's go through these games real quick. And folks, just to make this fun, I got betting odds. Got betting odds.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, we at Inner Circle and Extra Innings Softball do not condone nor endorse the betting of any of your money. If you do it, you're an idiot for doing so, and don't blame us
if
you
have
happen to go broke.
Entertainment purposes.
For entertainment purposes.
Don'tbetonit.com. Isn't that it?
Yes,
there.
Don't bet on it. Thank you very much.
Let me start with Texas and UCLA. Over under 7.5. UCLA is favored. They're minus 290. Who do you guys like?
Ooh, over.
Are you talking about? Okay, we're talking about the game, correct?
Game and over under if you want. Whatever you want to go with.
Look, can I do a Michael Wilbon and push? Oh, I'm sorry, not Michael Wilbon. You started this.
As long as you mention the right teams and don't confuse Arizona State with Arizona like he did when he congratulated Northwestern. Anyway,
Wilbon's a desert person, not talking about I-95, and I end up. Let me stop right there.
Wow.
Let me stop right there. Let me stop right there.
Damn.
Let me stop right there.
Tony Kornheiser doesn't go after him that hard like you do.
No, he goes after everybody else. I'm going Texas. I go Texas.
Justin.
Oh, gosh. So we said over under with 7.5, and who was the favorite?
UCLA is the favorite.
I mean, I'm taking the under.
Okay.
And I'm gonna go. I'm actually gonna go Texas because those two teams played earlier in the year in Clearwater, and I think it was a very different Texas team then than it is now. But I think it's the under, and I think Dulcini v. Ferramo is going to be a really fun matchup if that's what it ends up being.
Especially being early in the morning. Interesting to see how UCLA accounts to that 9 a.m. body clock, even though they've been at OKC a few days. Still 9 a.m. Pacific. Very interesting. Northwestern and Oklahoma. Oklahoma minus 700 favorite. They're actually a 3.5 run favorite, which for those that don't follow this kind of stuff, that's a big number. That would be the equivalent to like being a touchdown or 2 touchdown favorite in football. Over under 10.5 for Northwestern Oklahoma.
Oh, over under 10.5.
It's a big number.
I'll,
Vic is all nervous. Vic's all nervous. He feels like they're going to get phone calls from Vegas or somebody.
all 10.5 could come from Oklahoma, right?
Oh, dang.
No, I actually think Northwestern will score. To be fair, I think they'll put at least one on the board. I mean, it's Oklahoma easy.
So you're taking the 3.5.
But I'm going to say the under.
Under the run score.
Yes.
But you're taking
I
Oklahoma
agree with
to cover
Justin.
the 3.5.
Ooh, to cover. Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll pick them to cover.
Frisk living on the edge, baby. Love it.
Wing and a prayer. and maybe a Dr. Pepper.
Get John Bon Jovi. Where's Bon Jovi when you need him?
Exactly.
Oregon State and Florida over under 6.5. Florida's a minus 175 favorite over Oregon State. Interestingly, this is the closest from a money line standpoint of the four. Surprisingly, Florida is the smallest favorite of the four.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, that
given how-
surprised me a little bit. You would have thought Texas UCLA would be the closest one.
Yeah.
But no, it's Florida, Oregon State. So I don't know if that's respect for Oregon State, not respect for Florida. I don't know how you want to read it.
I think it's a combination of both. More so respect for Oregon State than the disrespect for Florida. But Tim Walton will make it seem like disrespect for Florida. But that's neither here nor there.
He's friends of ours, all right?
Yes. We are friends of Tim Walton. Hopefully. Take the under, take Florida.
Justin?
What's the over-under again?
6.5.
Oh, Florida with the under. Absolutely.
Look at Justin Cobb. Love it. I hope you're writing this down, Vic. I really enjoy this. Me and you, you know what? Me and Justin may have to do this like off the air for every game. I really do.
Hey, just like Jenna, I got a podcast to take care of, sir.
Last one. Oklahoma State and Arizona. Oklahoma State, a 2.5 run favorite, minus 390, the second heaviest favorite of the four games. Obviously, being in the state of Oklahoma, they clearly believe it's a big edge. Over under 7.5.
Oh. Who's first?
You go first this time, Justin.
Oh, I was afraid you were going to say that.
I went first last time with Florida and Oregon State.
I know. I wanted you to go first this time too. Oh, wait. Okay, give me the cover number.
7.5 is the over under. The Oklahoma State is a 2.5 run favorite over Arizona. Okay. In comparison, Oklahoma is 3.5.
Oh, see, this one's the toughest of all of them for me. I'm gonna say, this is tough. I'm gonna say, with hesitation, Oklahoma State does not cover.
Okay, fair.
So I'm picking Oklahoma State to win, not to cover. And the over under 7.5.
Yeah.
I think I've taken the under in every one of these so far. Actually, I'm gonna say under again here.
I will go. I'm gonna surprise you. I will take Oklahoma State, but go the over.
Ooh.
Go to over.
Okay.
Late night games tend to be a little high scoring. By the way, I'm getting a text from a former All-American, multiple-time All-American.
Someone who we know very well, Mr. Lopez.
I'm not saying no. I'm not. We know a lot of All-Americans.
So multiple-time All-Americans, though.
And I've had multiple All-Americans text me saying that Cody's snub is a travesty.
Amen to that.
Travesty. That's a fun word,
isn't it? It's nice. And that's from All-Americans. And again, if it was in my world, I would have them vote because they know They know what it's like to be an All-American. Most of these coaches have no clue what an All-American is like because they never were one.
Here's a question for you on that topic, not to get you fired up again, but it will.
Oh, boy. Just what we need.
Who pays better attention as a group to the college game? Coaches who are playing and coaching in it, or All-Americans who are no longer in it? On the full scale.
Maybe SIDs.
I don't know about that.
I mean, if you had the Softball Writers of America, Softball Writers Association of America, sure, like the FWAA, maybe you have the SWAA.
Well, you bring up a good point. We don't have enough media in softball,
Right?
like other sports, that can make up the ground. I'm going to defend the All-American players. I think there's enough of them that do pay attention, that would be good voters. Now, to your point, do we go through a process? And you could counter and say, you know what? Who's to say that these All-Americans don't have a conflict of interest? Maybe they're friends with some of these players and maybe they vote for them. So maybe it's just impossible to get rid of the conflict of interest no matter who you place as voters. But maybe the answer is a combination. We can't do a combo, a little mixture, get some differences of opinion, a different perspective.
They do that with the Heisman Trophy. They have national writers, and then they have all living Heisman Trophy winners put a vote to who wins the Heisman Trophy.
Right. Couldn't we do a combination?
But that's one award, whereas All-American get 54 a year.
It's a true. Yes, exactly. It's a true.
Well, I agree with what Victor said. I think we need to simplify some of this. I wouldn't be opposed to shrinking it and make it why do we have so many at-large spots? Like, what's that about? Like, it'd be like adding like 5, wide receivers to the first team, NFL All-Pro teamers.
How many are on there?
3? 2 or 3,
okay.
Vic, right?
Not 2 or 3. But it's craziness.
I like the idea of a combination of things. Like, you want to put some coaches on? I'm not even opposed to some former coaches either. But sure. You could do. Look, I'll give you a name here. Brian Davis is going to retire after, we think, right? This is not.
He is.
This is the second retirement from our buddy Brian Davis, the Texas SID. I think he's very knowledgeable. He couldn't vote. I think he knows the game. I would have you on the panel. I would have you and Graham Hayes. I think you two are very smart and follow the game inside very closely. And I don't think you two are married to 1 or 2 conferences. I think you both follow the sport nationally. My problem is I don't think these coaches follow it nationally. I think they vote for people they play against or who are their players. That's my issue. I think we got to kind of equal that out a little bit.
I mean, I kind of already said I think it's actually okay how it is. So I don't know what else I can add to that. I don't know what else I can add.
You didn't like the compliment of adding you on the panel?
I do appreciate it. And the thing is, I think if we were at the point of a group, if we had a softball media presence that was legitimately large enough, I think that would be the way to go. But as it is, to get to that point, we'd have to add every random person. And that actually, I think, would be doing a disservice versus, the.
We're gonna stop. Vic's ready to go.
No,
Vic's ready to go.
He's what ready. I think it is. Though. I think for me, though, I think the way it is right now, maybe they're all bad options because nobody can fully pay attention at this point. But I just think the coach's option is actually fair because I think it's the same as the committee, and they can sit in a room and run numbers and be good at doing it.
I like the idea of a combination. Some All-Americans, maybe some media, maybe some SIDs, some coaches. You have a lot of different perspectives. I don't know. But I can tell you this. My phone, people are not happy. They're not happy. And there's some people in the chat room not happy. You know who's happy is Vic, because we're going to wrap up the show before he gets mad. Picks. This is it, boys. We're making picks. Who's winning who's winning the whole thing? I will go first. I'm going all Bedlam. Oklahoma over Oklahoma State. Bedlam in OKC. Bill Plaschke's going to flip out in the LA Times. He's going to say it's an unfair advantage. It's going to be Oklahoma over Oklahoma State. That's my national title pick.
If Bill Plaschke's mad about it, it's probably the right thing then.
Oh, we're just.
Are you sure? Let me stop. Go ahead, Justin. Go ahead, please.
I mean, same. Bedlam. I think. I think that's what's going to end up happening. At this point, I think those are the 2 teams that have the best chance at beating us. So that's who I'm going to pick, and probably means we're both going to be wrong. But hey, it's okay.
Especially if Vic agrees with us.
I'm waiting. I'm waiting.
No, I agree with Oklahoma. I got Oklahoma, Florida, my national
Ooh.
championship series.
2017. Does
There's
that mean we're
something.
getting a 17-inning game again?
Oh, please, Lord
Oh,
have
look at
mercy.
John.
All I
After we
gotta
get
say-
off this, everybody's gonna have a quick little prayer time, so that doesn't happen. No, no.
The people who are praying that it's not happening in no particular order: Ryan Urquhart, Crowd Crooks, Chris Plank, whoever's doing Justin McLeod,
Thank you very much.
whoever's doing the game on Westwood One, Beth Mowins, Michelle Smith, Jessica Mendoza, Holly
about-
Rowe,
And about 40 Women's College World Series staffers.
and people in the press box.
Yeah, that too.
Stating for the record, we will not do a live post-game show after
No.
a 17-inning game.
No,
Vic
look. If
Vic may not make it through 12.
I might not make it.
Hey,
I'm here.
for the record, I did make it through all 17 innings. That fateful evening, I did make it through all 17 innings.
Put that one right up there with the water and the wine, honestly.
Look, let me put it this way: I made it through that game with more ease than that Florida State Oklahoma game last year. Ask Justin how bad I was struggling.
Yeah, I know you were struggling. That was the game that changed the whole schedule format.
Exactly.
I will warn you about this, Justin. The last time that me or Vic were not at the World Series was 2017, was Oklahoma, Florida. That's when the 17-inning game happened. So get some coffee.
Justin, don't say we didn't. Justin, if we didn't have a respect and appreciation for you, we wouldn't forewarn you of these things.
I'm not saying anything.
You know what we're going to say? You know what we're going to say? We're going to say it's time for us to get out of here.
By the way, Glenn Warshaw chimes in. I was at that 17-inning game. That was wild.
Yeah, I was there too. Wild doesn't even begin to cover it.
Everything video says this is about to be better than the NBA playoffs. I hope so. We'll see about the TV numbers. We'll follow that. No way this version of OU needs 17 innings to beat Florida, says Fang Nai. Oh, boy.
Anything is possible. That's why you
All
play
right. Stevie B has a few choice words for Bill Plaschke. I'm not going to read that, but you can see it on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. Instead, Justin McLeod, tell the audience what they can find, what they can expect at Extra Innings during the World Series.
I'm all kinds of World Series coverage. I went back and pulled some good history and talked to some former players and got some of their thoughts on the world. So just had some kind of having some fun. Obviously, we'll cover the World Series and the games and the happenings and all that kind of stuff. Just a little bit of everything, and then after the World Series, stick around for everything from transfers to coaching moves to thoughts on other things, and maybe some of what I say on live shows will make it into print eventually. I doubt it, but it's possible. extrainningsoftball.com.
Parker Dickerson says, I think if any game goes long in the World Series, it'll be UCLA, Texas tomorrow. All day tomorrow will be hours behind. Fang Nai says it could go 21 innings. Good.
Okay, so when I get off here, I'm going to find the nearest prayer service.
Oh, no.
And just be there for a minute, because that's what it's. Oh, y'all. Oh, Lord.
Wow. We'll leave it on that note. Thank you to Justin McLeod for joining us. Thanks to Jenna Becerra for joining us as well. Victor, this exceeded my expectations. We went long. We went in a lot of different places. But as we say, this is how it's. It's the show.
You got to give the people. You get the people what they want. That's what we got to do.
Keep it on In the Circle SB on Twitter. We'll let you know when we're going to be on next. I think we're going to be on Friday prior to the first games on Friday. We'll recap Thursday, let you get you set for Friday and beyond. But again, In the Circle SB will give you all the info on Twitter. We're going to have some coaches around the sport to come on the show throughout between now and the national championship, like we did last year. The only show that does that. We'll have Justin back on. Get some coaching scoops for us, will you?
At this point, I'm just hoping you're not speaking things into existence.
With Victor, anything's possible. That's all I know. Enjoy the World Series, everybody. For Victor, I'm Eric. This has been In the Circle.
Good night, Canada.